This is the coolest and best place in the world to be in podcasting. The media industry is collapsing. Podcasting has the highest conversion rate of any media on the planet. Brands are looking at the space because it's going to solve that problem of conversion and awareness. When I got fired from 5FM, I felt like I'd been pushed off a cliff. And while I was falling, I realized I wasn't falling, I was flying. Part of the reason that they let me go was because I was so passionate about the digital space that was coming. The station was not ready to hear it, and they were like, we're on two different paths. And today, the Africa Podcast Network, it's the largest podcasting network in Africa. We represent the largest creators across the continent. We have over 10 million unique people in the audio space, double that in the video space. We're bigger than most radio stations combined. We also represent the BBC, Acast, SiriusXM, and Amazon for Africa. The two big insights that drive AMPT and the Africa Podcast Network is that there's no support for creators in South Africa. And so AMPT is supposed to be that support for networking. And even the Africa Podcast Network, the whole purpose of it is to create monetization lanes for podcasters, which we saw as a pain point. So everything is about getting cash and giving it to creators. This space is ripe for opportunity. And one of the big frustrations is how much opportunity is in podcasting. There's so much misinformation. People don't know what is happening in the rest of the world. And this year, I've spent a lot of this year at the biggest conferences around the world doing research, speaking at these conferences, meeting all of the biggest podcasters on the planet, the biggest distributors, the biggest networks. I realize how much we don't know down here, but the whole world is looking at Africa. That was why I wanted to do this class, to bring everybody into what's happening. So let's just look at the reality of the podcasting situation and where it is right now. And the closest analogy I can come to is Bitcoin. Think about Bitcoin. I mean, most people who even trade in Bitcoin don't know what it is. They don't know the power of it. The people who are taking advantage of Bitcoin are those who are deep in it and know what it's all about. And like in anything, there's lots of shit in Bitcoin. There's scammers in Bitcoin. There's people taking advantage of Bitcoin. There's people who know what's happening in Bitcoin. That is similar to the podcasting ecosystem. And even deeper, what did Bitcoin do for the world? It decentralized the thing that couldn't be decentralized. Money. The banks, the gatekeepers, they own the money chain. And there's no way of getting to... If you want to start a business, you have to get the bank's permission. You have to register things all the right ways. And if the bank doesn't like what you're doing... I mean, if you want to start a bank, you can't. You need a license to get a bank, right? The gatekeepers in the Bitcoin space, they've held it for years. And suddenly come this disruptive force and smashed it to pieces. And it's completely in tension with itself. And the whole world is changing because of what Bitcoin is doing. This decentralization has democratized money. You can do shit without the banks knowing. They hate it, but you can do it. And people are doing it. Regulators are trying to regulate it. It's really hard. It's unregulated, so what happens? Scammers, all that stuff happening. It's a mess. But we all know that it's moving into a place that everyone has to take it seriously, and it's a part of our future. And if you're in finance... If finance is your career, you can't be ignoring this. And podcasting is in a very similar space. It is disrupting the mainstream media in a significant way. Let's look at what just happened in America as an example. I'm not getting into the politics of it. I'm just saying it's undeniable. Because until that election, podcasting was still the baby dog. It is no longer the baby dog. It is a serious threat to mainstream media. And this is a good thing. And what happens in these disruptive times is opportunity. Those who are real creatives here and are innovators here, this is the time, because there is very little innovation actually happening here. But we are still one of the most innovative continents in the world for podcasting. Now, let me explain a few things why Africa is ahead of the curve in podcasting. When everybody got into podcasting years before we did, we're very new to podcasting. You know, like typically in Africa, we're always last in, but we move quick, right? We are moving quick. And we got in last, and we did it our own way, kind of the backwards way, because we didn't care what the rest of the world was doing. The rest of the world has come in from the Spotify, Apple audio world. And Spotify came here late. We only had Spotify for a few years. All of the infrastructure, all of the technology, all the podcasts were built into audio. And now video is suddenly the big new thing in the rest of the world. You can't have a podcast without having video. This is new information for the rest of the world. But guess what? None of the tech is compatible with video. None of the ad serving tech is compatible. They're all screwed. They're all trying to figure out how to move the needle. There's YouTube, which we love in Africa, and there's everybody else scrambling. Right now, there's a global war. Spotify is now trying to get their video component up to compete because they also missed the boat. Now, we in Africa, we started on YouTube. Then the Spotify came along. We're like, okay, we'll do that too. And everything on the video-centric side is actually compatible into the audio space. And so this whole wave of our podcasters being really strong on YouTube and being strong in the Apple and Spotify audio spaces, this is easy for us and much harder for the rest of the world. And that is something that is a unique competitive advantage that we get to take advantage of down here. The rest of the world as well, particularly America and Europe, have gotten quite complacent with podcasting. There's very little innovation because the market matured a year or two ago and they don't know what to do next. And all the really cool stuff, new podcasters that are smashing out of the ballpark and doing stuff, big numbers, it's happening here. And everyone is seeing it, but they don't know what to do about it. If any of you follow me on Instagram, I'm harping on this quite a lot. And it's because there is money in what I'm about to say. The perspective I'm bringing is very unique and very high level because of what we're seeing, who we're working with. So we work with everyone from Pumila Dwaba, Vusi Tembakwayo, the Daily Maverick, El Tido, DJ Spoo. I worked with Mac for many years from the beginning and we stopped working together this year, but I was the first person to get him commercial partnerships and I was with him right up till past his 1 million subs. I've been in the trenches in this space. And I'm so passionate, excited about where it is. And because we have a very strong revenue stream, I'm going to talk about the marketing aspect of it in a minute. This is so critical to understand. I want to understand as a creator where the gaps in the market are. Now, globally, the podcasters that do really well are comedy, true crime, news and sports, and a really big one, vernacular language content. These are huge trends that are big everywhere, but not here. We're consuming international content because most podcasters are doing the sit down and have a conversation podcast, which we'll talk about now. And most are doing interview celebrities. Mac eats that market for breakfast. There's a few fantastic ones out there as well. There's a lot of podcasters in the market doing this stuff, but those days are gone. And the gaps in the space, where are our local comedy podcasts? That is money for jam. There are people looking for comedy. You can see it because there's always comedy in the charts. It's always international stuff. Where are the comedy podcasts? Where are vernacular? There are some, so I know you can shout, oh, but don't you know this podcast? I know what's out there. But in South America, I'm working with a network there. They're doing telenovelas, you know, those audio dramas in the audio-only space in Spanish languages. They're getting 8 million listens a week. That's 10 times bigger than what a radio station is getting here. We're a storytelling continent. Where are they? Like, no one's even experimenting them in African languages. Why are we all doing what everybody else is doing? Where are the daily news shows? Dan Corder came in, smashed the market, got snapped up by ENCA. Why are the big news publications not doing daily news podcasts? We're all competing in the same market of like, I'm going to have a chat with my mate. Understanding the dynamic of the industry is really important to understand where the commercial opportunities are. Let's move on to what should I be doing with my podcast. The space is moving really fast. And we're at the tip of the spear here in Africa. And I find our podcast the best in the world. I'll tell you why. I see it at Amped Culture. You guys are hungry for stuff, right? When you're starting a podcast, you're not just doing it for fun. You're trying to build a career. The podcast in the rest of the world is like, hey, Chibi, why don't we do a podcast about thingy on the weekend? They're doing it like that. So all the podcasts are good. But our podcasts are great because they're like, guys are bringing their A game to the space. Gone are the days that you can just turn on your mic in your bedroom. A year ago, even, there was lots of opportunity to just do it at home, chat to your mate about what's happening in the news, la, 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 la. That was podcasting and has been for the longest time. It's not happening anymore. Those major players have dominated that market. And if you're coming in, it's highly competitive. You need to think about show format. If you look at the economy of what's happening in the world, here is the brutal reality. Subscription model is not working. Netflix is not working. DSTV are not working. YouTube is working. Everybody is on YouTube. And in the current climate, people are deciding whether they want to watch on Netflix or they're going to watch on YouTube. Now, the positive side of this is understanding the role of gatekeepers. Show format is everything. You have to think about your podcast the same way that you were going to go to this head of Netflix and say, this is my show idea. Now, if you go and talk to Netflix, you know that everybody is pitching to them. They're hard to get to. You better come up with the best show concept ever because they're going to see another 100 from another 100 people that same day. So you pitch your ass off. You want it to be unique. You want to have talkability. You want it to have virality. And that same approach you need to bring to your podcast. You need to have a show where somebody says to you, have you seen the podcast that? Like, if you don't have that, you're going to lose in the space. For example, this is not my example, but it's a good example. You could do a podcast about people who have been ghosted by their exes, and while they're talking, the ex comes out, right? Okay, now check your reaction. And you're going to say, have you seen Jon's podcast, weather, right? That's format. When you are in front of them, these are the questions they're going to ask you. Well, where is your show format? What is the tone of the show? What is the market fit? Who are you talking to? And that is why bringing your A game now, this is the space for creators to up their game in innovation and what they want to do with the podcast. If you look at what's working, it's the people thinking, do you guys know Josh Rueben? Check out the Wide Awake podcast. This kid who I love is a freak of nature. I don't think he's seen another podcast before. He just makes this stuff up. It's based on nothing. He's got stories in him that he's trying to tell. And he's becoming a global phenomenon. It's almost like documentaries. The whole life he was embarrassed that his ears were sticking out, so he had them pinned. He did a video of his ears getting pinned and then showed people the process of it. Like, everyone on social is like, what the heck? I wanted to see this, you know? That is why show format and understanding how competitive the environment is an advantage for you as an innovator, as a creator.
Calling out all content creators, from artists to podcasters to any creator who uses any form of audio. You can now upload your very own audio clip from a song to a content clip and promote your work using the MTN Caller Tunes platform. The cherry on top is you can use the Caller Tunes to make some moolah, cash, pesos by getting your fam, friends, and fans to use your Caller Tune, which will mean money in your pocket. So basically, every time someone listens to your Caller Tunes, likes it, they simply press any key from 1 to 9 to download it as their own, and that is a win for you too. You can submit your audio through AMP's very own distribution channel with MTN by sending it to the very email below. And of course, through Caller Tunes, you get access to the creative world of AMP Studios with access to our resources from recording studios to podcasting equipment to events, networking sessions, and all of it. Get as creative as you want with MTN Caller Tunes and AMP Studios.
I want to talk about gatekeepers quickly. In the old world, and this is what drove the building of the Africa Podcast Network and where we are, I, like you, have been frustrated with the gatekeepers. 5FM didn't want me because I had an idea that I really thought would work, but it's their show. It's their audience. They get to tell me no. You know, when I was on 5, the question I got, how did you get on 5? It's almost impossible. It's a lot of luck. I mean, I worked hard for it and I did some crazy stuff. That's another whole story. But that didn't get me on 5. It was like a combination of things. The gatekeepers are real. In this environment, there are no gatekeepers you can see except the audience. And they are more brutal and worse than any gatekeeper you've ever met. They tell you immediately whether what you're doing is working. The beauty of it is because this space is so strong in analytics, you can study what your audience wants every single time you do a show and adapt. If you do a show about dogs, and you get 50 views, and you do a show about cats and you get 150 views, you know to start talking about more cats. And if you do about big cats and you get 30 views and you do small cats and you get 500 views, you know to start doing about small cats. The audience is there, and that's why your mindset shift is very different to like getting your message out. It isn't getting your message out. That's what radio is for. Go and stand on the airwaves and get your message out and inspire people. You have to build an audience from zilch, and it's a snowball. There's no boosting. There's no shortcuts. There's your brutal audience, and there's you and hard work. And this is really important for you to understand. There are no gatekeepers, no barriers. But if you're innovative and you are passionate, like the podcasters, Mac was built to do this. He is a benchmark, but he's kind of the Michael Jackson of podcasting. You can't replicate what he did. He did it his way. There's no number two there. There are other podcasters like Josh or like Abumi who are revolutionizing podcasting in their own way by doing things their own way. And that's why you've got to break out that mold and think outside the box. This is the coolest and best place in the world to be in podcasting from a monetization perspective. Not necessarily at this minute, except for a few podcasters. But the entire world is changing, and this is my perspective. In media, the entire media industry, globally, advertising is falling apart. They're having huge issues. The reason is they can't get their message to people anymore. They're struggling. They're finding new ways to give you an ad you don't want in a place you don't want it. Everywhere you go, there's a pop-up. Everything is like free data if you watch an ad, right? And these ads are not effective because you don't care about these ads. All the largest companies in the world this year, in the last few months, have made a big announcement. They've cut all their media spend globally. They're focusing on Facebook and Google marketing. Now, first of all, that's all money going offshore. None of that comes here. This is a big problem for our media industry. We're going to see a lot of media companies collapsing in the next year because of this. But really, it's not solving the problem. What Facebook and Google marketing gives you is reach. They reach everybody. Now, if you are in marketing, there are a couple of KPIs. KPIs meaning objectives that brands need, that they've got money to spend on. One of them is their priority is reach. And that means just getting their name in front of you wherever you are. That's reach. And that's a really important metric. The next one is awareness. How do you get people to be aware of your actual brand name and choose you over a competitor? And the third big one is conversions. Conversions is the killer. Conversions means that someone who's seen your ad buys your product. That's worth a fortune to them. And if you're new to marketing, conversion rates are like 0.01%. That means that 0.01% of people who see your ads is going to convert. In the last 2 years, Dentsu, the biggest media company in the world, Nielsen, the biggest research company in the world, and Lumens, who do all the eye tracking stuff, who study how people respond to ads. And there's two big research points that have come out. Podcasting has the highest conversion rate of any media on the planet, meaning someone is more likely to buy your product having engaged with you on a podcast than any other ad that is being served globally. Second of all, it's up there with the highest attention metric. Attention is the gold standard. It's kind of been lost. What attention used to be is why people used to spend millions on the best Nike ad ever is because you were watching the television at 8 o'clock when Cheers was on. There were 6 million people watching on that day. And that Nike ad was so cool that you remembered it. But those are gone because you don't want to watch ads. So where is the attention metric? Attention in podcasting is so high, particularly if the podcaster mentions the brand in their own words, not in a scripted environment. Now, also, podcasting, if we look at audio outperforms video in awareness. My analogy here is think about the podcasting environment. If you've ever been to London, if you walk down the tube, in the tube tunnels, there are ads all the way down the sides. Millions of them. Every inch is covered with an ad selling you something. And my experience has been, if there are 50 McDonald's ads on every side, but I'm listening to a podcast and they serve me a KFC ad, I'm completely listening to the ad and I've ignored everything in there. There is something about the power of audio, the theater of the mind. It's high awareness, high engagement. And because you're listening to a true crime drama about wada, when that KFC ad comes out, you are still in the theater of it. And that's why it has such a powerful attention metric. In addition, in Africa Podcast Network, one of the things we do is we only charge clients for a completed listen. If you skip the ad, we don't charge. Sometimes between 95 and 100% are unskipped. Now, why do you think that is? Your phone is in your pocket. You can't be bothered to go now, reach into your phone and skip the ad. It's a schlep, right? Just listen through the damn thing. Another thing we've learned, put a pre-roll right at the beginning of the podcast, and it was more likely to get skipped. Put it 1 minute in, you're up to 95% not skipped, right? Why? Because you've chosen your podcast, you've pressed play, it started, you put it on your pocket, and now you're running down the road. You got the ad. Why am I telling you all of this stuff? Because Google and Facebook has reach, massive reach. It doesn't have depth. And there's very little in the commercial space that can go deep like podcasting does. So understanding what I'm trying to tell you now is that the media industry is collapsing, and it's collapsing into the podcasting space. In my opinion, podcasting is the answer to the marketing issue. A US election woke them up, and more brands are looking at the space and recognizing how important this media space is, because it's going to solve that problem of conversion and awareness. Now with APN, we're a very unique product. We've built something that is creator friendly. We understood that there are global opportunities for Africa. We're building infrastructure for Africa. We represent other podcasting networks. We're creating opportunities for people who are not in our network. One of the programs we're running is we are teaming up the biggest podcasters in the world in America, Europe, and Australia with a collab with, they do a podcast with one of our podcasters and we do one with one of them. And we're trying to build an infrastructure where we're working more together and being able to access the real opportunities, which is hundreds of millions of dollars right now that they don't know who to talk to, they don't know who to access, who do they go to? And so this conversation and starting this idea that it is time to start working together, working more openly, and creating opportunities for each other. And APN has started working more and more in trying to build an infrastructure where we have a sales funnel. We don't own any of the podcasts we work with. We completely believe in independence, so we create an environment of independence. I think we're the only company in Africa who have a very special partnership with YouTube called MCNA. When you work with us, we don't own your podcast like a normal channel network you would with YouTube. So you come into us and you act like a giant channel that works directly with YouTube, but you're not. You leave whenever you want. You own all your own IP. And this whole model is being built to grow the market throughout the whole of Africa. We need to work together and we need to work smarter. I encourage everyone, reach out, talk to us anytime. And for now, thank you. Please ask questions.
Surrender, surrender, surrender.